Hello, my name's Tim Hinchliffe. I'm the Managing Director of Mowbray Manufacturing Company Limited, and we own two companies where we operate from these premises here in Sheffield. Woodware Repetitions make lovely wooden handles for various hand tools, and George Barnsley and Sons where we make knives and tools for the shoemaking and allied industries. What we've tended to do in the last few years since we sort of took over the business is deal with more end users rather than sort of trade customers. So the end users can vary from one-man band working out of his shed to small companies making shoes or bespoke shoes and stuff like that from all over the world. If you look back into the sort of history of the city, the Barnsley family's got a fabulous name going right back to 1650. There was a George Barnsley that was Master Cutler in Sheffield. The Master Cutler is a sort of an honorary position. Whether it was the same George Barnsley sort of family connection, we can go back to 1883 when there was another George Barnsley as a Master Cutler, and he was definitely of this George Barnsley family, if you like. The history of George Barnsley and Sons, it goes back many years in the city of Sheffield, making hand tools and files. I've known Colin Barnsley for many years, for probably 15 years or so. We used to talk quite often on the phone, and I became aware that Colin was thinking about retiring and selling off the business, and none of his family members wanted to have any involvement to carry the business on. And so at the same time my son was looking for something else to do, and I thought it might be a good match. I approached Colin, and probably over a period of a couple of years I managed to persuade him to sort of sit down and talk seriously about it. I don't think he was keen to retire, and he'd be in his sort of early mid-70s then, and we sat down on a Saturday morning one weekend, and Janet was there, his wife, and she sort of made the comment to say, well, we're going to have to do something because I'm not going to have another big birthday here, Colin. So I think probably Janet sort of swayed him into it a little bit as well. And once Colin got the idea that I was going to involve my son Richard in the business, then he sort of warmed to the idea, and we agreed a sale and how we were going to take it forward. We signed over the business in April 2018, and Colin very kindly agreed to work with us for another year or so after that, and really took Richard through the factory step by step and allowed us to learn a little bit more about the business, and put us in quite a good position to take things forward. It's quite a straightforward process in many ways, in that it's a simple concept, if you like. We take basic materials like wood and steel and bring them into the business, and most of the work is done on this site here. If you talk about making a knife, we might either stamp out the knives on site, the knife blades on site here, or we sometimes take our steel to be laser cut or water jet cut, one of the local factories round us. Then they'd be brought back here and examined, and then they go through the various stages of hardening and preparation ready to be made into a knife.
So the knife process, it's fairly complicated, but we'll take it step by step. We start with just the blades and the handles. These are pinned together using 3-pin. Nice and simple. They're then sanded to give this handle a really nice finish. So you should end up with something a little bit like that. We then take the sanded handle and we sharpen it on the grindstone and just give it a nice edge. Nothing too sharp, just semi-sharp. That's then taken to a sharpening machine. This puts a much finer edge on it. It's basically two wheels that spin together, and that'll give you a fairly sharp edge. We then take it to a heading wheel. This will blend in the edge of the knife, which lets you cut a lot cleaner through things because there's no sudden lip as you're cutting. Once we've done all that, we take it back to the polishing wheels that we used earlier, and we do the same two-step process with the cutting and then the polishing compounds, and that gives you a really fine, really sharp knife.
We obviously mount the handles on the tools here and prepare the knife scales and handles on site. If the handle's got a finish on it, that's applied here as well, and then we put them into stock ready for sale.
French pattern hammers. These come back from the hardeners. So pretty much like the knives, they're then taken to a belt and glazed just to bring out the shine and make them all nice and smooth. Custom made hammer shafts. These are made in-house as well, but they're slightly modified to fit these hammers. These simply slot into place once they've been modified to fit, and they're put on a press and pressed down to give them a nice tight fit. What we do, we use a ball hammer, and you hammer in the middle of this using a ball, and that will spread the material so that it won't go back through the hole that it came through. That ends up giving it this much larger finish, but it makes it very secure. So this is our fresh blade, straight back from the hardeners. These are laser cut in Sheffield. Stamped and then hardened. So once it's back from the hardeners, we glaze it on a fine belt, which is 120 grit. We then polish it on a wire wheel. This brings out the stamp a little bit more and just gets rid of any remaining bits of rubbish like around the edges where you can't quite get with a belt. Then it's on to sharpening. First of all, we start off on a grinding wheel and take out most of the meat to get it to a sort of sharp finish. It's a slow process, but with a bit of practice you can get it almost as good as mine. That's then taken to another machine, a polishing machine, and we've got two separate polishing wheels. One's a harder wheel, one's a softer wheel, and we use two different compounds, one for each wheel. We start off with this one, and that takes a little bit more of the edge off and brings it more to a sharp finish. And then we finish with this one, which just takes off any remaining fash and gives it a nice shine. When you start grinding, if once you get to a thin edge, it starts to slightly burn and leaves a little bit of, it's almost like peely skin. on the end, which you need to get rid of to reveal a true sharp edge. The final process in this is putting them on our in-house handles. These are drilled to 5mm because the tang on that is 5.5 by 2mm, so that leaves a nice tight push fit finish. They're hammered into place using a wooden mallet. And that leaves it nice and secure. If you use a metal hammer, you damage the end of the handle. So a wooden mallet just gives you a little bit more, it's the gentle approach. The tang is the part of the knife, or blade in this case, that fits inside the handle. So these are just an internal tang. If you had scales, it'd be classed as a scaled tang. Or you could have a through tang where it'd come all the way through and then you can secure them at the end. This little bit of brass at the end of the handle is what we call a ferrule. That just stops the handle from spreading and splitting while you're inserting a tool, and it also looks quite pretty. So this stamp was handmade by a little old man in a shed in Sheffield. That's then put into a 2-ton press. These are sat on a block of wood, and you press the pedal, the press comes down and embosses the stamp into it.
When we became involved, I looked at it and thought, well, you know, if we could get a website set up and get some more face-to-face contact and also direct contact with the customers, then that might be a route to further develop sales. To that end, we set up our own website and started to photograph the tools and put them online. Quite a painstaking process. We'd also then got to try and gauge a market price. I think initially we might have been a bit shy on pricing the tools, but you know, because we're dealing now direct with the end user, there's more costs involved in that process, and we've come to learn that. We try and keep everything in-house as far as we can in terms of the website and any adjustments or updates to that, so we can be quite responsive. If there is something new we want to introduce or something that's out of stock, we can adjust that straight away. We've got customers really all over the world. Initially it was quite slow to take off, and we got quite a lot of interest from Japan, South Korea. Colin already dealt with a few people in Australia, but we generated more business from Australia, and we've started to do more business with North America and as far as up to Alaska. We've even got a customer in Greenland, Mexico City, customers in Panama, so it's really, you know, all over the world. Yeah, in terms of the tools, we've got a better interface now with the customer and the end user, and we try to talk to people about how we might improve the tools. A lot of these designs go back years and years, never been changed, and we're now starting to put together little ranges of tools that are perhaps more user-friendly, responding to how the customers say that they use the tools. We've also improved our sharpening processes in-house. We're always open to people coming on to us and saying, have you thought about this particular thing, or I've seen an old tool, could you make something similar or whatever. So yeah, we do talk to people about designs, bringing the range up to date, if you like. What we do want to do going forward is to preserve the traditions of the area. This whole area around Kelham and this part of Sheffield, Neepsend, it's got a history of what you call little mesters, where each little craftsman has their own little workshop and they combine in teams to finish products. The tool making skills and things of the bygone days and the practices, we're trying to carry that on. You know, it's Sheffield's known throughout the world for its cutlery and knives and things like that, and you know, we want to try and keep a little bit of that going. You know, if we could try and preserve a little bit of Sheffield. You know, that's what we want to do. We've obviously had to invest, and we've put in, you know, the families working together to redevelop the business and take things forward into the future. We respect the name ourselves. You know, that's why we got involved in the business. You know, so and it's we want to carry on that tradition. When we took over the business, Colin had got a really nice established team of people that worked here for many years, but unfortunately quite a few of them were coming up to retirement. My son's coming to work in the business and my daughter Laura now. We've managed to set on sort of 3 or 4 new people that were already had a good experience on either tool making or turning, or picked up a fabulous guy who used to work on gun stocks and things like that. We've been very fortunate because there are a lot of people out there in Sheffield with the skills. Some of these people have worked for sort of 20 or 30 years in little tool rooms and stuff like that, who perhaps haven't been sort of able to get a job where they can practice those skills as the tool making industry's declined. And they've been good for the business, no mistake about that. We need that new blood to help things carry on. I think that's one of the things that Mr. and Mrs. Barnsley appreciated, that I was bringing Richard into it and he could see it was going to be carried forward, and we were trying to maintain the traditions that the Barnsley family had sort of set down, if you like.